The summer air clung heavy and humid to the small suburban neighborhood of Greenbrier Estates, a community that prided itself on its manicured lawns, neatly aligned hedges, and an ever-watchful HOA. Among the pastel-colored houses sat a modest two-story home with a tidy garden and a quiet backyard. Inside that home lived Daniel Reese, a young homeowner who had recently moved to Greenbrier with his companion, a rescued African gray parrot named Jasper. Jasper was no ordinary pet. He had a sharp intelligence, a knack for mimicry, and an uncanny sense of timing that startled anyone unfamiliar with his habits. For Daniel, Jasper was family, a bright spot in an otherwise lonely chapter of his life. But to the HOA board, Jasper was a rule violation waiting to be fined. Greenbrier Estates had a strict list of approved animals: small dogs under a certain weight, domestic cats, and a handful of fish species were acceptable. Anything more exotic, including parrots, was prohibited. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning. The envelope bore the HOA's insignia, its contents terse and unmistakable. Daniel was being fined $500 for keeping an illegal pet. The letter claimed Jasper violated Section 8, Article 12 of the community bylaws. Along with the fine came a warning: remove the pet or face escalating penalties. Daniel felt cornered. Selling or surrendering Jasper was not an option. Instead, he tried to comply with the HOA in small ways, keeping Jasper indoors during daytime hours, covering his cage at night, and ensuring no noise complaints could be lodged. Yet, despite his efforts, more letters arrived. Each fine felt heavier than the last. Each warning threatened harsher action. Behind the scenes, the HOA board was a tightly knit group led by Patricia Halloway, a meticulous, image-conscious president with a penchant for strict enforcement. Under her leadership, the HOA operated with little transparency. Rules were rewritten, fines increased, and homeowners whispered about mismanaged funds and unaccounted for dues. Still, no one dared challenge Patricia's authority directly. As summer turned to fall, Daniel grew increasingly isolated, buried under fines he couldn't afford. Meanwhile, Jasper's restless energy filled the house. The parrot had started mimicking not just Daniel's voice, but also snippets of the HOA meetings Daniel occasionally overheard through thin walls and open windows. Jasper's cage sat near the window, where Patricia often passed during her neighborhood inspections. The parrot's sharp eyes followed her movements with eerie precision. One crisp October morning, Jasper squawked a string of numbers that Daniel didn't recognize. The parrot repeated them over and over in a tone that eerily mimicked Patricia's clipped, authoritative voice. It startled Daniel, who wondered where Jasper had picked it up. Only later did he realize those numbers resembled bank account digits or an access code. As weeks passed, Jasper began stringing together other phrases, names, dollar amounts, and odd financial terms. Daniel started writing them down out of curiosity. Slowly, a pattern emerged. Jasper was repeating parts of private conversations he couldn't possibly have overheard inside the house. Daniel began to suspect that Patricia or another board member had been conducting confidential discussions near his window. Discussions Jasper had memorized and now parroted back verbatim. One night, while organizing his bills at the kitchen table, Daniel heard Jasper mutter a particularly revealing sentence, a phrase about redirecting maintenance funds, followed by a figure that exceeded thousands of dollars. Daniel's pen froze midair. Could the HOA be misappropriating community funds? The idea seemed outlandish, yet the evidence sat there, squawking at him from Jasper's perch. The realization transformed Daniel's frustration into determination. He began researching the HOA's bylaws, financial disclosures, and past meeting minutes. Much of it was vague or incomplete. The HOA claimed that maintenance costs had risen sharply, justifying higher dues, but no visible improvements matched those expenditures. It all aligned with the cryptic details Jasper had been repeating. Jasper had, by sheer accident, collected fragments of a conspiracy. Daniel only needed proof, but as the fines mounted, he realized he was running out of time. The HOA had scheduled a compliance hearing to decide whether Jasper must be removed permanently or Daniel evicted. The night before the hearing, Daniel sat awake, listening to Jasper's murmurs in the dark. The parrot was still repeating numbers and phrases like a living recording device. For the first time since moving to Greenbrier Estates, Daniel sensed the power shifting, not in favor of the HOA, but in his own. The stage was set. Daniel planned to use Jasper's unexpected testimony to expose the HOA's hidden practices. But he also knew it would be risky. Patricia and her allies would not go down without a fight. As dawn broke, Daniel gathered his evidence, the notes, the bank-like numbers, and a recorded clip of Jasper repeating the suspicious phrases. Outside, the HOA board assembled for the hearing, unaware that their tightly controlled world was about to crack. The meeting room in the Greenbrier Community Center was brightly lit but heavy with tension. Folding chairs lined the perimeter, filled with curious neighbors who had come to witness the spectacle. Patricia sat at the head of the table, her posture rigid, papers neatly stacked before her. Beside her were two board members, their faces a blend of smugness and anticipation. Daniel arrived with Jasper in a covered cage, his notes tucked under one arm. He had rehearsed his plan all night. The HOA had given him this stage, and he intended to use it. The board began its routine procedure, reading bylaws aloud, listing Daniel's violations, and preparing to vote on a forced removal order. But Daniel remained calm, letting the formalities roll past him. When Patricia invited him to make his final statement, he lifted Jasper's cage onto the table and uncovered it. The parrot blinked in the bright light, tilting its head. For a moment, silence filled the room. Then Jasper began to speak, in Patricia's own tone and cadence. The bird repeated the damning phrases Daniel had painstakingly recorded over the past weeks. Redirecting maintenance funds. Private account, $32,000. Off the books transfer. Each phrase landed like a thunderclap. Murmurs erupted among the neighbors. Several people began taking out their phones, recording the parrot's performance. Patricia's face went pale as Jasper mimicked her voice exactly, layering financial details and names into a surreal confession. Daniel then presented his written notes, linking Jasper's recitations to the HOA's incomplete financial reports. The board's veneer of control cracked. One member abruptly stood and left, muttering under his breath. Another tried to shout Daniel down, but the crowd had turned restless. Demanding answers, Patricia attempted to regain composure, calling the evidence absurd and inadmissible. Yet every word the parrot spoke aligned with suspicious figures in the HOA's own paperwork. The neighbors had long suspected foul play, and now they had a bizarre but undeniable source pointing toward fraud. Word of the meeting spread quickly across social media. Videos of Jasper's performance circulated within hours, drawing both ridicule and outrage. By evening, the county compliance office had opened an investigation into the HOA's finances. The following week, a court order froze the HOA's accounts pending review. As investigators dug deeper, they uncovered a pattern of embezzlement and unauthorized spending reaching back several years. Patricia had diverted thousands in dues to a private account under the guise of future maintenance projects. Several board members were implicated, resigning before charges could be filed. In the weeks that followed, Greenbrier Estates transformed. Without Patricia's iron grip, the HOA board was restructured with new leadership elected by the homeowners. Transparency replaced secrecy. Rules were rewritten to be fairer and less invasive. Pet restrictions were loosened, acknowledging the absurdity of banning harmless animals like Jasper. Daniel's once maligned parrot became a local legend. Neighbors left small gifts of fruit and toys on his porch. Jasper basked in the attention, learning new phrases from admiring visitors. News outlets dubbed him the whistleblower parrot, and his story became a quirky headline in national media. For Daniel, life slowly returned to normal. The fines were rescinded, and his legal costs reimbursed by the HOA's restitution fund. His home, once a source of anxiety, now felt like a safe haven again. Yet he never forgot the months of intimidation and isolation he endured under Patricia's rule. In a twist of irony, Patricia faced criminal charges and was forced to sell her home to cover legal fees. The pristine order she had imposed on Greenbrier Estates crumbled, replaced by a more neighborly spirit. Community barbecues returned. Children played in yards without fear of violation notices. And in the center of it all, Jasper thrived, a symbol of how even the smallest, unlikeliest allies can spark the downfall of corruption. Daniel often reflected on how close he had come to giving up. Without Jasper's mimicry, he would never have discovered the HOA's fraud. The bird's unwitting recording of Patricia's misdeeds had not only saved him from eviction, but had also liberated the entire community. On a mild spring morning months later, Daniel sat on his porch with Jasper perched on his shoulder. The parrot whistled a cheerful tune it had picked up from the neighborhood kids. Around them, Greenbrier Estates looked the same, the houses still neat, the lawns still trimmed, but the atmosphere felt lighter, freer. The HOA still existed, but it now served the people rather than ruled them. Meetings were open, budgets posted publicly, and homeowners encouraged to speak without fear. Daniel knew Jasper didn't understand the depth of what he had done, but he rewarded the bird with a favorite treat anyway. As the sun rose over the quiet cul-de-sac, Daniel realized something important. Power, even when dressed in official titles and sealed envelopes, could be undone by truth, sometimes spoken by the most unlikely voice. Jasper squawked one last phrase from his cage, a favorite he had learned during the ordeal. No more fines. Daniel laughed softly, knowing the parrot was right. For the first time in months, the future of his home felt secure,